Welcome back to episode 2 of NZ Unlimited.
Welcome back, everybody.
Today's episode is going to be about sports nutrition, and Emma is going to run us through all things sports nutrition, which is exciting. I'm excited to hear about this. So, Emma, can you kick us off by giving us an overview of what is sports nutrition essentially?
So, sports nutrition is going to be a little bit different from your everyday general nutrition for overall health, but we still want to implement a lot of your general daily nutrition into your sports nutrition strategy. So, it's really important when it comes to nutrition that we are focusing on ticking all of the boxes when it comes to overall health. I know Nick will probably disagree with me on this one, but a healthy athlete is an athlete that will perform well, even though health and performance don't always go hand in hand. Essentially, when it comes to nutrition, we want to be making sure that you are eating your whole foods, you have your adequate intake of your fruits, your vegetables, your micronutrients, so calcium, iron, vitamin D, for example, are all really important micronutrients for athletes. And we get this from having a well-balanced, healthy diet. So you can think of this as the foundation. I actually like to think of sports nutrition as a bit of a cake analogy. So when you think about your plate, you can think of your healthy or your balanced relationship with food. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have a healthy relationship with food, it's going to be really hard to build upon the layers of your sports nutrition strategy or your cake. As if you are somebody who is suffering from disordered eating, that foundation is going to be really rocky and unstable, meaning that you're not going to be able to eat, the ultra processed foods or increase your calorie intake to support the demands of your sport. So when we think about that very first layer, which is the plate, that's the foundations, that is the healthy relationship with food. On top of that, we want to make sure that we do have the whole food. So we are ticking our micronutrient requirements. This is a really important thing for overall health, dietary fiber. We want to think about longevity, not only in your sport, but in overall life. Minimizing the risk of chronic disease as well. On top of that, we want to build our sports nutrition strategy. So athletes, they have much higher energy demands than the general population and are at risk of, low energy availability and relative energy deficiency in sport. This is something that I will dive in a little bit deeper on a future topic. But essentially, if an athlete is not meeting the demands of the sport or fueling for the work required, that athlete may not only impact their long-term health and put themselves at risk of chronic health conditions, but also their performance in the short term and how they are going to perform in their sport. So meeting these demands is really, really important. And athletes, it's not just about being in energy balance or eating at your maintenance calories or bulking and cutting. It's actually about being in optimal energy availability. Now, this is the amount of energy your body requires for all physiological functions and the energy required for your sport. This is the most important part of your sports nutrition strategy. And then on top of that, we do want to consider things like your macronutrient distribution, so your fueling timeline, how we are timing your carbohydrates in and around your training, protein intake throughout the day. We want to be considering things such as your micronutrients, as already discussed. Vitamin D, iron, calcium are all really, really important for athletes, as we are at higher risk of deficiencies in these particular nutrients. And then on top of that, things such as your hydration, your supplements. So when we think about that cake, we've got that plate, healthy relationship with food. Then we have your energy availability, so your energy intake, including all of your whole foods in there. And then we have your icing, so you can think of that as your macronutrient distribution. And then your sports supplements are going to be on top of that. So that's like the sprinkles, the little 1%ers. But at the end of the day, if you are not fueling your body with all of the whole foods required, the sports nutrition strategy on top of that is only going to do so much. So we've got to really look at nutrition as an overall, where we've got your performance nutrition and your everyday nutrition tied together.
Yeah, awesome. That's a really nice in-depth kind of overview of nutrition strategy as a whole, and then sports nutrition. And I actually love the cake analogy. I haven't heard you talk about that before, but as someone personally that loves a good analogy,
Yes, you do.
that one really sits really nice with me, and kind of frames how nutrition should look really nicely. I mean, I've been guilty in the past of maybe focusing a little bit too much on what you referred to as the icing or the sprinkles,
Yeah.
without the dense cake underneath it, which, when I was listening to you speak about that and I was thinking about the cake and building that out, I mean, no one just wants the icing, you want the cake with it. So,
Yeah.
that really hit home for me, and hopefully it does for anyone listening as well. So, moving on from that, that really nice overview of what sports nutrition is as a whole, can you expand a little bit on, and I think you touched on it a little bit, but can you go a little bit deeper on why focusing on sports nutrition specifically is important for an athlete or for an active individual?
Yeah, absolutely. So, athletes or active individuals, the goal is to perform at your peak. Even if you are a recreational gym goer or, like a weekend warrior at sport, like you still want to have the results. You still need to put in the work to get those results, whether it's building muscle or winning your weekend game, going to the grand final, it doesn't really matter. Obviously, elite athletes, it's so important that you are giving that extra 1% and you are performing at your absolute peak. So, when it comes to nutrition, we can really utilize sports nutrition to fuel this performance and optimize essentially your athletic development, even. So, when we think about what we can contribute with nutrition, we can ensure that you can push harder in those sessions. So, I don't know if you've ever experienced yourself, maybe when you were powerlifting or even playing rugby, going into those really long training sessions and getting halfway through and starting to feel like you're hitting the wall.
Mhm.
Of course, like you have the mindset, especially you yourself as an athlete, I know you have that mindset where you can continue to push. But imagine when you actually have the fuel or the energy in the tank to push that little bit harder and actually avoid that feeling of hitting a wall altogether. So you can continue to push your intensity, you can continue to, get that extra rep. Maybe you can grind a little bit of a heavier weight depending on what your actual goal is. So we can utilize nutrition to actually help improve performance because you have more energy. And then we've got the recovery aspect of it as well. So if you are underfueled, you're not going to be recovering. If you are underfueled, your sleep is going to be suffering as well. We need to think about like muscle protein synthesis, carbohydrates for glycogen restoration to get you ready for your next session. So essentially, at the end of the day, utilizing a nutrition strategy that actually focuses on performance rather than just aesthetics. So a lot of athletes kind of grow up in the gym. So they go to the gym, they train, they might kind of do some bro split, some bodybuilding style of working out. They might chat to the gym bro who gives you a bit of a bodybuilding style nutrition plan, which is all like clean eating or you need to eat more protein. And I've had this with clients as well, like, oh, why am I not eating enough protein? This person in the gym said, oh, I should be tracking, I should be eating protein. But these are performance athletes. So, carbohydrates are a priority. Depending on the sport that you're in, you can need anywhere from 3 to 12 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight per day. Athletes, you might be training multiple times per day, depending on what your sport is. So you have to recover and then get ready for that next session as well. So it's not just enough to be putting on muscle, to be doing a bulk, to be doing a cut. You actually need to utilize nutrition to help your body be able to perform at its peak. So having that energy to push through those sessions, having the micronutrients as well, because a lot of people will only think that it's all calories and macros. And I've heard multiple people say this before as well, like micronutrients don't matter. It's just about the macronutrients if you want to see results. But there are actually some micronutrients that do help with energy metabolism, help you utilize the nutrients that you eat to create and generate more energy, which is going to help you push harder in the gym and recover faster as well. So hydration is another one. Hydration is a huge part of a sports nutrition strategy. And if you are in a fluid deficit of just 2% of your body weight, your performance can significantly decrease. So there's so many more aspects to nutrition than just macronutrients and just calories or bulking and cutting, which I think is where a lot of athletes fall short.
Yeah, 100%. You kind of asked me the question, during that little soliloquy of, I'm sure that you've felt like this before, or you've felt like you've hit the wall, or you've felt, like you needed to push through, but you didn't maybe feel as good as what you could have. And, I can tell you 100% I've felt like that. I've pretty much felt like that during majority of the sessions, I've ever done in my entire life until you started doing my nutrition. My nutrition strategy used to be stop at Stockland Jasmine on the way to training and get two pitas and a pizza
Yeah.
and eat those on the way to the gym and feel gross and sluggish and then low energy halfway through. So, coming from someone that did grow up in like a bro setting and an aesthetics, I guess, kind of setting from a gym perspective and not really taking into consideration what performance might look like from a nutrition standpoint. After having you taking care of that for me and following it to the best of my ability, I can tell you absolutely that it makes a difference, and I've never felt better, and I've also never trained harder. So or recovered better. So yeah, it 100% makes a difference. So I guess off the back of that, what are some, now that we know what it is and how important it is, what are some things that I guess our listeners could take away from this as a general principle, and maybe some things that they could implement today that they may make a difference in their performance?
Absolutely. So the number one thing is being in that optimal energy availability or meeting the demands of your sport. Now, this can be quite difficult to work out on your own without a sports dietitian or a sports nutritionist. However, you can go off how you are feeling. So if you feel like you have plenty of energy, if you're recovering from your sessions, if you have energy for everyday life, you're sleeping well, if you're a female, you have a healthy menstrual cycle, these are all really good signs that you are eating enough to support the demands of your training. You can also utilize a calorie calculator online to calculate your maintenance calories. Now, there is a difference between energy balance, which is your maintenance calories, and optimal energy availability. But if you start at maintenance calories, it's a good starting point, and then you can just slowly increase your calorie intake. Keep an eye on your weight. If you're maintaining weight, like that's probably a good sign you're not going into an excessive surplus. Or essentially, like, I'm more than happy for anyone to DM me on Instagram, as I do like to make sure a lot of athletes are in optimal energy availability, and it can be a really simple conversation to have. So number one, meeting the demands of your sport. Number two, following a fueling timeline. So this is how you would time your nutrients around your training session. So just to break it down really simply, 3 to 4 hours out of training, have a balanced plate. A balanced plate looks like your lean protein sources, whole grain carbohydrates, healthy fats, and plants. A balanced plate would be about a third carbohydrates, a third protein, and a third plants, and about a thumb portion of healthy fats. If you're a large male, probably like yourself, I would actually probably go a quarter protein, a quarter plants, and half whole grain carbohydrates. From there, as you get closer towards your training, start to taper down your dietary fat and your dietary fiber. So 2 hours out from your training session, have a moderate serving of carbohydrates, a large serving of carbohydrate and a moderate serving of protein, but now start to taper down your plants and your fat. And about 30 minutes out from your training sessions, have 0.5 to 1 gram per kilogram of body weight of simple carbohydrates. So here we want to utilize your ultra processed foods. If you're an athlete, do not be afraid of ultra processed foods, as they can help you meet your energy demands and fuel for the work required. So this could be things like lollies, Gatorade, refined grain cereals, dried fruit even, white bread, pikelets and jam, and so forth. And then if you're training for longer than, 60 to 90 minutes, having about 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour throughout those sessions as well. And post-session, recovering with another balanced or performance plate.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Emma. I think there's a ton of value there for everyone listening. And, if anyone has any questions off the back of that, I'm sure you're okay for them to DM you and further that conversation with you via Instagram.
Yep, absolutely.
So thank you everyone for listening to this episode.
Thanks for joining, guys.